February 26th meeting of the Rotary Club of Louisville. Providing our invocation today is Angela Bailey, the president of Cardinal Compensation and Performance Consulting, and Paul Harris.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. Would you please join me for a moment of gratitude? God, we thank you for the opportunity to gather as leaders, neighbors, and servants of this community. In a world that moves quickly and often loudly, may we value the steady work of truth, connection, and service. We are grateful for voices that inform, uplift, and unite us. From newsrooms to concert halls, local stories shape our understanding, preserve culture, and strengthen our shared humanity. As we hear from Kenya Young today, remind us that leadership rooted in mission is leadership rooted in purpose. Grant us wisdom to lead with integrity, courage to navigate change, and humility to listen well. May our work, like public media at its best, serve all of Louisville and beyond, and may we reflect your light in how we lead, how we listen, and how we serve. Amen.
Amen to that. Thanks, Angela. Now to lead us in our pledge and Rotary four-way test is Brigadier General Andrew Bates, United States Army retired and Executive Administrator for the Procurement Division at Louisville Metro Government, Office of Management and Budget.
Thank you. It's my honor to lead the pledge in four-way test. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Isn't the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you, Andrew. Rotarians, we have a guest today. Please come to the mic and tell us who it is. And the guests, please stand when they do.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. My guest today, I'm Anne-Marie Swerve with the University of Louisville. My guest today is Marcus Goodwin. He is the Human Resources Director of the Muhammad Ali Center and the President-elect of LSHRM. You don't have to come up here, so. Good afternoon, Rotarians. My guest today is Seth Pennington. We heard last month from David Horn, and he talked about what EOS has done for his company. Seth is an EOS implementer, and I'm pleased to welcome him today. Thank you.
President Ken, fellow Rotarians, my guest today is Alan Rosenberg. You can stand, Big Al. He's a retired CPA. Please welcome him.
President Ken, fellow Rotarians, and guests who are here with us today. I'm Lori Flannery with the Gaines Foundation, and my guest today is Carrie Richardson. Carrie is the president of Connexus PR. She is a longtime senior PR and communications professional here in the Louisville area, and she and I served together in the Bashir administration. She was director of communications for Steve.
President Ken and fellow Rotarians, I have the privilege of introducing Mr. Lawrence Glazer. He's joining us today, recently retired, and his lovely wife joined us a few weeks ago with some students from Silver Creek High School, sponsored by Miranda Construction. So thank you for joining us today. We hope you join us.
Good afternoon. I didn't know I was allowed to do this since I'm not paid officially yet, but the president can. I do have guests here today. So my four guests, if you would stand. David Lopez is here today. Excuse me. And consultant, strategic planning, development consultant, Karina Briz. I don't have to introduce Karina. Executive Director of La Casita Center. Bridget Dale is the COO of the Center of Nonprofit Excellence, winding down. And Catherine is the COO of the Speed Museum.
Awesome, welcome to all of our guests. John Bush, one of our best darn presidents ever. You want to stand after the meeting? John's going to tell you more about Rotary back where Colleen is at that table. So please go on back. We would love to have you consider us. As always, we have several Rotarians in the spotlight. Congrats to the Rotarians named the Louisville Business First 2026 Power 50 list. Power 50 list. Kristen Bird. I got it. Dave Christopher, Kim Hallbauer, Jennifer Hancock, Ty Handy, Lyndon Pryor, and Todd Spencer. Quite a group. Also, we have to congratulate Alyssa Gray, who was selected as one of the 2026 Power 55 on the rise. Alyssa, here. Two Rotarians joined the Power 50 Hall of Fame, Reverend Kevin Cosby and Gil Holland. And congratulations to Natalie Pasquenza on her new role as the CEO of Children's Advocacy Centers of Kentucky. And our entire club will be in the spotlight at the Louisville Central Community Center's annual meeting and celebration luncheon Wednesday, March 18th, where we will be presented with the Community Service Award. This award is extended to entities that have made significant contributions to LCCC and the broader community to advance equity through the empowerment of economically disadvantaged families. And President-elect Barbara Sexton Smith will receive the Lyman T. Johnson Distinguished Leadership Award. So please join us for this free event. You can scan the QR code or look on the link on our website. Also, please join us for the Rotary Spring Fling at the Zoo Tuesday, April 14th from 4 to 6 p.m. for bites and beverages, animal encounters, and just great fellowship. We'll be in Zoo Vision behind the Leemore Habitat. And thank you to Robert Chatham, who is sponsoring this event so that we can keep the price at $20 per person. And Rotary Day at the Downs, Wednesday, April 29th. We have to pay the balance due on 150 tickets on Monday, so if you are planning to attend, please go ahead and scan the QR code and purchase tickets, or look for that link on our website homepage. Registration is open for the Rotary All-Stars Conference at the Galt House, May 8th and 9th. Our district is teaming up with Indiana and Tennessee for a tri-district conference you won't want to miss. You can purchase tickets for the luncheon and or dinner on Saturday, the pre-conference activities Friday, or both. I hear Jean West has donated a week's stay at her home in Aruba that you can bid on in the auction during dinner. And don't forget about the opportunity to double your Paul Harris Fellow points with the district matching campaign. It only happens once a year. See the flyer on your table or contact Mike Poole or Amy Luttrell for more information. We have all kinds of events and service opportunities to cover. You can glance through them. We have a date picked for Habitat for Humanity Bill and Repair Affairs. So look on the website and learn more. Lots going on. All right. If you haven't already, follow us online, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and YouTube. I'd like to invite to the podium President-elect Barbara Sexton Smith, Executive in Residence, Louisville Metro Government Vice Chair of the Rotary Fund Board, and Paul Harris Fellow +8 to induct some new members.
Thank you, President Ken, and fellow Rotarians and distinguished and honored guests. Those of you that are with us from week to week on a very regular basis, you're probably wondering, where in the heck are all these new members that Ken and Barbara have been introducing week to week? And we have brought into our club, I believe, in excess of 60.
71 as of now.
71 in the last year, correct? All right. So, I'm taking a little point of privilege here, sir, without your permission. I'm sorry about that. So, as I thought about that from week to week, if we're gonna induct 3 new members and pin them, as Kenya said a few moments ago, so you're thinking, gosh, we haven't outgrown the room though. So how is it that we can bring in 71 new members when this room was full a year ago? And where are those 71? Many of you are here. So Ken will ask you all to stand up momentarily. However, have we lost any members in the last year? Delene, about how many have transitioned into other things in life?
55.
55 individuals. All right? So I'm contemplating asking President Ken in the coming weeks or so if I may have a few extra moments at the podium to kind of talk about that. And all I want to say is I want y'all to think about something. In your businesses, in your families, in your neighborhoods, in your social organizations, we all know what the one thing is that keeps people engaged. It's participation. So when somebody new joins this organization, y'all reach out, grab them, get them involved in things. Committee chairs, get them involved in your committees. Committee members, if you haven't been to a committee meeting in a while, go to a committee meeting. If your chair hadn't scheduled a meeting in a long time, call them up and say, what the heck are we doing? All right, so we are going to keep this net number moving because President Ken set one of his top goals for the year to hit at least 380 members on a continual rolling basis, right, sir? Okay, we're close and we're not there. So with that, I'm going to try to move you 3 folks closer. With Wendy Cosby, Kenya Young, and Bill Quigg, please join me at the podium. Give them a big round of applause. All right, so fellow Rotarians, you all know we seek to grow our membership not only to increase our impact and our influence throughout our community, but we are also trying to increase the spirit of Rotary in Louisville and around the world. So I say to our 3 new members, this is very exciting. So you've been selected to membership of our Rotary Club of Louisville so that we may not only increase our impact, but we believe that you possess the qualities and characteristics that we value as Rotarians. We believe that you have already shown in your life that you live by our motto, service above self, and we believe that each of you already live by that 4-way test. And we're going to encourage you all to continue to do that in all things you think, say, and do. Now, not only are you being admitted or readmitted to a new club, as Bill is, to the 10th largest club in the United States of America, we're the 12th largest club in the entire world out of 45,000 clubs. So when you travel, whether it's across town, across the country, or to another continent, I'm going to encourage you all, look up and see where the Rotary clubs are. Oh my goodness, it literally will change your life. It is so exciting to meet folks in their club, in their communities. And all you have to do is say, I'm a visiting Rotarian, and you will be treated like royalty, as we believe you are as you travel. Yes, yeah, we do, we believe that. Give them a round of applause. They're up here doing all those jobs. So it's now my honor to induct each of you officially into the club. So as you all saw in the training video that we all sat through last week, I know we spent 5 hours together last week, the 4 of us, studying for this. Oh, Wendy, you might have missed that, but I'm going to let you go first. Yeah, so each of you will have 1 to 2 minutes to share a little bit about yourself, and then I'm going to invite your sponsors to come up for the actual pinning. And then the last thing we do, we stand together and flanked by President Ken and myself for that famous photo. You ready? Okay, welcome Wendy Cosby.
Good afternoon, my fellow Rotarians. I'm super excited to be here today. And thank you to my sponsors, Mackenzie and Melissa, for encouraging me to join such a wonderful organization. I have taken a few notes here so I do not forget what I want to say. The Rotary Club of Louisville has spent more than a century uniting leaders who believe in service, integrity, and strengthening our community. It's our mission, service above self, perfectly reflects the values we live every day at Republic Bank and Trust. Our work is rooted in partnership, economic empowerment, and helping people and businesses thrive. Rotary's commitment to ethical leadership and community impact mirrors the way we approach banking. People first, relationships always. I've built my career around some of those same principles. For nearly 10 years, I've served as Vice President and Business Development Officer at Republic Bank, supported the lending and depository needs of commercial clients. With almost 25 years in banking, which means I got started at 3 years old, I've helped hundreds of individuals and businesses across Louisville reach their financial goals, and many of those relationships have grown into long-standing partnerships built on trust and shared success. Community involvement is also a core part of who I am. I serve on the boards of the Olmsted Parks Conservancy and the Better Business Bureau. Giving back to the city that raised me is one of the most meaningful parts of my life. I'm a Louisville native and a proud Sullivan University graduate, and outside of work, I love gardening, plant-based cooking, staying active, cheering on the Midway University Eagles, where my husband is a football coach, and of course, cheering on my U of L Cardinals. Traveling is another thing I love, and spending time, of course, with my family, my husband Brandon, and our 2 daughters, Kyra and Kyla. Thank you all so much.
So I need Melissa Cobb and Mackenzie White. Will you please join me up front and stand along with Wendy and then be ready to present the pin. There you go. All right. Now, Bill, would you please join me over here? All right, big round of applause for Bill Quinn.
This is my going on 43rd year in Rotary. And my 4th club and my last club. I'm here permanently. I went to the University of Virginia, and I'm sorry for you U of L Kentucky fans. After college, I entered the Coast Guard. I'm from Richmond, Indiana, by the way, and I have a saying, after you get out of school, first thing you want to do is either join the military or work on a farm. And I really wanted to be a farm manager, but I took the Coast Guard instead for 4 years. And had an experience on the East Coast, on the Grand Banks, the Portuguese fishing village of New Bedford, and then in charge of search and rescue for the Great Lakes. Those 2 experiences gave me an opportunity in search and rescue individual situations that I was in charge of that literally changed my life. That's for another day, because that's a full story. And the Carl D. Bradley singing on Lake Michigan was my honor to take care of that search process where 33 people died. After the Coast Guard, I got into radio in Richmond, Indiana. I worked there in college and the college station, and had worked a couple of summers, and I got my first job managing the radio station in Bedford, Indiana. And that got me to Louisville in the 60s on a regular basis, and I bought my first color TV at Stewart's department store. Way back then, in those days. Radio is interesting. I went from there to Beaumont, Texas, and learned to eat Cajun food, and then came back as CEO of the corporation and was able, to step back, I was put in charge of acquisitions because we wanted to expand, and so that's how we got the Beaumont station. I went down there and checked that out, and then bought 2 other stations for the company in Chillicothe, Ohio, and Adrian, Michigan, and was CEO for 12 years. One thing about radio, when you're in a community, is you get selected for a lot of boards, and that happens. One reason, when you get a license, you have to go interview community leaders, and I would come into town and in Bedford and interview all the community leaders. So when you get there, you know everybody who's in charge, and the same with all the others. The result is you get asked to be on boards and everything. A couple that were significant. One, I was chair of the hospital board in Richmond, which got me connected in the hospital field, and I've been on the ethics committee at Honor Health in Phoenix for 25 years. And am now volunteering at Baptist. I also worked at the Cancer Support Community, which is Gilda's Club, Karen, and met Karen about 12 years ago after my wife died, and stopped by her office, and she's still here. Congratulations on that. I think we've had about 6 turnovers in Phoenix in that time. Bank boards and you name it, it goes on and on like that. After 30 years in broadcasting, I left. The saying in my generation is that I didn't leave broadcasting, broadcasting left me, as the business changed in the 90s. And I started corporate training, and my vendor moved to Phoenix, and that's how I ended up in Phoenix 30 years ago. One thing that really influenced me a lot in Phoenix was the cancer support volunteering and with Coleman. Phoenix is an interesting city. When I joined, we had 375 in Rotary, and when I left, it was 120, which is not an uncommon problem in organizations like this. And because it's expanded, 5 million people, and they're all living in the suburbs, and there are no corporate headquarters there anymore, except technical companies, and they're all out in the suburbs. So what am I going to do in a new career? And values have always been important to me. They were big at the hospital and big on the ethics committee, so I now speak professionally on using your value system to make ethical decisions. Almost every decision you make in a company, think about it, has an ethical perspective to it. And on the ethics committee, every decision has an ethical dimension, and it's not medical, it's how do you deal with the family and the caregivers. We had a sign on the wall that said, "Don't enter this room because of abusive behavior being exhibited." That's sad to think, but we had a shooting in Baptist this week, and I volunteer over there now. So it's a pleasure to be part of this club. I used to make up at the golf club. I got tired of driving downtown, so I went to Breckenridge, and at the inn there, which is now a hospital. So I've been familiar with Louisville. My daughter's here, and I'm on the board of a contract manufacturing company in Versailles. And I learned early on it's not Versailles, it's Versailles, because we are the same city in Indiana. So thank you. It's a great honor to be here.
All right, so I'm going to ask Karen Morrison to come up and do the honors of the official penny for Bill. Bill looked at me and pointed and smiled when he said Breckenridge, because those of you that are fairly new to Rotary don't know that there used to be a club that met at that place. And I did have to explain to my husband every week why I was going to the Breckenridge Club and the Breckenridge Inn, and spending a few hours with a room full of fabulous men, because that's right, it was in 1990 and there were only 2 other women there with me. All right, Bill, welcome to Rotary. All right, Kenya. All right, Kenya Young, you ready to introduce yourself? I mean, I am, but I also have about 20 minutes to introduce myself. So, I'm gonna actually yield my time because there's a long bio coming, as I understand it, and then there's a long speech coming, and you guys will be sick of me by the time if I do too much here. But I am the president and CEO of Louisville Public Media. I'm a little nasally, I'm sorry. I did everything I could to get well by today. I've been really looking forward to today. I've been here for 9 months, so I'm very new to town. But you're about to hear that whole origin story, so I'm really not going to bore you now. Well, I guess it's like a teaser, right? So you'll hear the LA, DC, New York, ... Louisville story coming up. Okay. President Kim, you'll do the official penny, and then we will all move together for Delene's weekly new member induction photo. All right. Okay. Oh, the pen fell apart, and we're not going to talk about where part of it went. All right, I got to witness it all. Oh, thank you for. We're all good. We're all good. President Kim was only picking up the plastic. Yeah, that's right. Okay, we adapt, improvise, and overcome. Here we go. Kenya, you now scoot in. All right. Okay, President Kim, it's all yours again.
Always good to have new members. Any others for the past year that have joined us? You want to stand? We can give you a big round of applause as well. Thank you. We do have some longer-term members, so I'd like to invite Gil Holland up, since he's now a Hall of Famer. Community developer, film producer with Portland Investment, responsible for a lot of what you see in Nulu. Tell us about your journey, Gil.
All right, nice to be here. Nice to see such a packed room. So just a quick Rotary origin story for me. My mother came over on a boat from Norway. And when I was a kid, Bill, I got you beat by 7 years because my first Rotary was 50 years ago when my uncle took me to the Oslo Rotary. And my parents are teachers, and he was like the only business person I ever knew. And he was always talking about the importance of business development and business networking. And then, so 20 years ago when I moved to Louisville, I met Henry Heiser, who's here somewhere, who said, oh, you gotta come to Rotary. And I come, and I see all the community leaders, and I'm like, well, I do have to eat lunch. And then 15 years ago, the group was nice enough to invite me in and talk about this little neighborhood called Nulu, because I just invented the word Nulu, and talk about Portland. And so I've been trying to break down the 9th Street divide for the last 15 years. And then the last 5 years, I'm now shifting to the rural-urban divide, because I feel like that's one of the biggest things, really, the biggest challenges for our country right now. So I'm doing a lot of work in Harlan County. Love to invite you to Harlan County. And then yesterday, USA Today just said top 10 arts district in America is Nulu. So maybe a lot of neighbors coming together, and I feel like, you know, the community networking, it's not just business networking in this room, but it's a lot of great community networking. Proud to be here. Woke up at 4 in New York City, so I could be here with y'all today. All right.
And he's a movie maker on top of all that. I'd like Rick Harnett to stand, because yesterday he celebrated his 27th anniversary as Rotarian in our club. Bob Nesmith, can you stand? Earlier this month, 33 years with us. On Sunday, Terry Tyler celebrates 35, and Mike Mountjoy and Buddy Stewart celebrate 30. So that's pretty impressive. In case you missed it, earlier this month, Mac McClure, who's usually here, celebrated 53 years. I'd like to invite to the podium Kristen Boone, President and Chief Strategy Officer for the Boone Group, and a club director, to introduce today's speaker.
Hey Gil, I think we should take a trip to Harlan and go to their Rotary Club. Just like have that would be fun. All right, we'll talk about that. That'd be fun. All right, I am excited to introduce a new friend of mine, Kenya Young. She is President and CEO of Louisville Public Media, where she oversees 3 community stations: WFPL News, WFPK Music Discovery, and WUOL Classical, as well as the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting and 2 regional news collaborations. With nearly 2 decades in public media, Kenya brings proven success driving organizational excellence, sustainable growth, and civic engagement through innovative content and impactful partnerships. Previously, Kenya served as Senior Vice President at New York Public Radio, overseeing programming and audience development for shows including Radio Lab, On the Media, and the New Yorker Radio Hour. She spent 15 years at NPR, advancing from producer and editor to executive producer of flagship programs such as Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and the nationally ranked podcast Up First. and managing editor leading collaborative journalism initiatives. Kenya is a longtime advocate for including underrepresented voices in journalism and is passionate about developing and mentoring the next generation of public media leaders. She is a recipient of several broadcast and journalism awards and serves on the boards of the Online News Association, Board of Trustees of Public Media Infrastructure, and the Women's Advisory Council for Leadership Louisville. Kenya holds a BA in American Studies with a minor in journalism from the University of Notre Dame. She is married to visual artist J. Everett Young, has 3 sons, and lives in our Louisville, Kentucky.
Thank you very much. Is this, can I pull this off, or I'll just make sure I can see it from here? I appreciate that so much. It's been such an honor. It was such an honor to be invited to speak. And Ken invited me to a meeting very early on a couple of months ago. And I was thrilled to see the level of involvement. And the more I talked with you guys and Barbara and understand the mission and the service here, it was really a no-brainer to join. So it's such a privilege and an honor to be asked to speak as well. So thank you so much. And thank you to my guest that I introduced as well for coming. As you just heard, I've got a pretty long career in public media, but that's not where it all started. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where I came from, and how I got here, which is why you'll see why I yielded my time when they introduced me, because it's a long story. But let me put my timer on, because y'all, I can talk. I'll be here all day. So let's make sure I'm watching the clock here. So I am the president and CEO of Louisville Public Media. I joined the organization on May 19th, and my family moved here from the DC area in August. So a little bit about, a lot of people know my New York and DC region, but I've kind of been, it kind of looks like a United Airlines connection now. And I like to say I'm a California girl, but it's a little disturbing how much there is on the East Coast over there. So I was born in Philly. My parents went to University of Pennsylvania and got married and had a baby there, and then moved to California where my grandparents were very early on, but I still claim Philly. You know why, if you're from Philly. And so moved to California, grew up in Los Angeles, childhood, teen years, and then went, as you heard, to University of Notre Dame, went to South Bend, Indiana, had no idea what I was in for when I went there. Didn't even know how to buy a jacket, but I learned very quickly. And then moved back to Los Angeles after college. A couple years later, moved to Denver, because why not? It kind of seemed kind of cool. Met my husband, got married, had a baby there, and then needed my mama, so I moved back to LA again. Y'all know what I mean by that. 6 weeks in, and I said, oh no, I need my mama. So we moved. My husband had to come find me. He said, where'd she go? So he found a way to relocate. We moved back to Los Angeles, and then you'll see in my story, I moved to DC, or we all moved to DC, was in DC for about 15, 16 years before I got the job in New York. And then that line between New York and DC should be very thick, because I went up on Tuesdays and down on Fridays, and up on Tuesdays and down on Fridays. For 3 years I did that. And then was brought here to that big bright star of Louisville, Kentucky. So where does it all start? I mean, biologically it does usually all start with our parents, that is true. But it really does start with my mama, who I moved with my kids 6 weeks old to go to live with. Because she's very dear to me, of course, but also she's an extraordinary woman with a story that I will tell you. As you heard, I've been living in California. She was a psychologist and a social worker. And in 8th grade, she decided she wanted to be a doctor, in my 8th grade. And so we up and moved out of Los Angeles, moved to Irvine, California. She went to UCI med school. And the pivotal moment, I think, for me, and it really is the origin story for me, is my mom graduated from medical school at age 40 on one Friday, and I graduated from high school the very next Friday. That changes someone. And I watched that happen. And it told me that I could do anything, that I could be anything, and that there were no obstacles. She had a rowdy teenage girl out there in Orange County, and she did it anyway. So that really starts to create how I lived and how I saw life. I was going to be a doctor too, talking about being influential. In fact, I was going to be an ENT anesthesiologist. Have no idea where that came from. I think they probably make a lot of money, and that's what I thought was the thing to do. But if there's any doctors in the house, I hit organic chemistry. And I don't need to say anything further after that. If there's anything that's going to show a med student what they're made of, it's organic chemistry. So I backed right out and played a little, dabbled a little, 7 majors. I was going to be a ceramics major. I was going to be a photography major. I was going to be all the things because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And finally, I hit journalism. Notre Dame does not have a journalism program. I probably would have gone somewhere else if I knew what I was doing. But it is in the American Studies program. As you can imagine, my parents were like, what's that? But I did it anyway. We are still huge Notre Dame fans, as you see. I have not picked a school here yet. I know I'm supposed to, but I still have the Notre Dame flag waved in our front yard, so. Am I supposed to say that? So after college, I went back to Los Angeles, as you saw. I did not go into journalism right away. In fact, in LA, it's called journalism, it's called PR. And I went into entertainment PR. I worked at an agency called Rogers & Cowan that was built by a very well-known publicist, Paul Block. And I had, I'm going to date myself here with some of these studios here, but I had great clients, New Line Cinema, if you remember them, MGM, 20th Century Fox. And I did fancy events like the Grammys and the Golden Globes, and it should have been a 22, 3, 4-year-old's dream. I hated Hollywood so much. It was awful. I just wasn't cut for it. I didn't have thick enough skin for it at that time. So I moved on to anything that could be anything but entertainment, which was data entry at a financial annuity company. So I went to go do a temp job at Sun America, and that turned into a bit of a career. I worked annuities, and people, I tell you, my friends from college were like, how are you working at a financial company? We saw your checks in college. We saw your credit cards in college. How are they letting you do something? But I grew and I learned so much in that space. It was eventually bought by AIG, if you remember that company with Eli Broad. And then I went on to Denver, worked at Jackson National. This is really where I got my management experience. Call centers are very large teams of 500 or so. And I really dug into the project management, the large team, the training. And I still take that with me today. I think that is part of why I'm the manager I am today. And then a little bit of a pivot because I had some children. And I was a stay-at-home mom for 2 to 3.5 years. I always include that because ain't no job like a stay-at-home mom job. We can tell you. And it is part of my path. It is a decision I made at that time. But what I tell people, especially young women, is that doesn't define you and that doesn't stop your career. I did it for 2 to 3 years until I didn't do it anymore and decided to make the decision to go, well, let me tell you, the decision was made for you. As you heard, my husband's an artist. He wanted to work at a studio. I was a stay-at-home mom, and when we moved back to LA, those 3 things don't match at all. So I needed to go back to work. And I said, if I'm going to go back to work, I'm going to do what I love, which is journalism. At that time, I was walking around with my clippings from Notre Dame 15 years later, and I was not getting a job, as you can imagine. So I had to go to grad school. I went to Cal State Northridge, and I mostly went just to get an internship. Everyone said, if you're going to get a job, you're going to get an internship. Some kind of way I forgot that I hated entertainment. And so the first internship I sought out was in the writer's room of Days of Our Lives. Was so excited, again, dating myself. I watched Days of Our Lives, Channel 4 with my grandma, grew up on that. So it just felt like, I don't know, this seems fun if I'm going to go back to work. And so I got that internship. And then 7 days later, I also got a call from NPR. I was not an NPR backseat baby, as we call them now, growing up in the backseat, listening with your parents listening. I knew nothing about NPR, in fact. When I was at CSUN at Cal State Northridge, you had to listen to a station every day. And I was like, I don't know. I'll choose this thing called NPR and see what they're all about. And so I ended up applying to them. I got the phone call, and I will tell you, I was at this place called Travel Town in Los Angeles. Travel Town, you ride the little train with your kids. And I had just checked my bank account, and we were negative $80 in my bank account. And I was despondent and crying and all the kind of things. And NPR called, and they said, you got the internship, and it's a $3,000 stipend. And I wish I had a better story for tell you how I got into public media, but that was unpaid or $3,000. I took NPR. It was the right decision at the time, and sometimes you look back and say, why were things, I guess that check had to bounce for some reason to get me to NPR, not take that Days of Our Lives. But that $80 and negative and that $3,000 story is how I got to NPR. So there I was, 34 years old, going back to my mom's origin story, 34 years old, a 2-year-old on one hip, a 6-month-old on another, took this job at NPR. My husband looked at me crazy. There's that lovely 34-year-old with those 18-year-old interns, all at NPR in the Los Angeles office. Talk about mission, faith, and just taking a leap. I think it paid off, though. So the next 15 years, really 18 years, as you heard in my bio, I've worked on a multitude of shows. One of the great things about NPR is there's such a variety. One of the things they tell you in J school and journalism school is to start small. If you start a small market, you'll just be sitting there at the city desk one time and you'll get the big fire and you'll get the big thing. I started big, obviously, with NPR, but I started on a small show, News and Notes there, and just kind of worked my way up within the organization. As you heard, All Things Considered, when I was first named executive, All Things Considered, and negotiating, I did not know, and what my SVP did not know, is that I was pregnant at the time with my 3rd child, 10 years after my youngest at that time. And so I like to say, Michelle Martin, who was the host with me when we rebranded the show, I will tell you on the record, I think Michelle Martin's the best interviewer in all of public media. She's an amazing interviewer. She listens. She's an amazing host. And we relaunched the weekend version of All Things Considered together. So I like to say that I birthed 2 things at one time. We launched All Things Considered, the new version of All Things Considered, in October of 2015, and I had my sweet little Eli January of 2016. I then went on to go executive produce Morning Edition. It was, at that time, I think it probably still is, it toggles back and forth, the #1 news broadcast show on radio. And also, we're raising 3 kids at the same time. Shout out to all the working moms. Working's not easy. Being a mom's not easy. Doing them together, we know what that is. But that was my NPR origin story that brought me to New York Public Radio. And then I went to go lead their podcast division and their national shows division, which is this portfolio here. And then one day, then I'm out there living my good life. New York life, DC life, all the things, kids, launching shows, interviewing presidents, just the thing. Great time, great career, great portfolio. I worked on every show possible. I worked every job possible as a news producer, show producer, segment producer, an editor, and a journalist. So I savored that time at NPR for sure. And then I got a phone call from this place called Louisville that I knew nothing about. In fact, I didn't take the first couple of phone calls. And so I finally said, as I was ready to leave New York and kind of looking for something new, I told my husband, I need to take this phone call from Louisville Public Media, I think it's called. And he was like, okay. We keep jumping up and doing all these things. You saw that map. He's used to just doing things. And so it's like, yeah, let's just see what they're talking about. And about halfway through the process, and I have an amazing board. Alan is on my board. And I sat there, I remember in our house in DC, I was sitting on the stairs and said, hey, I think this might come through. It's like, we're not really thinking of moving to Louisville, are we? And I was like, if I get the job, we are. And I got the job. So I started on May 19th, and we jumped in the car and headed to Louisville, Kentucky. I say it pretty well for someone who's been here for 9 months. Huh? A lot of practice before I went into those interviews. I knew what to do. I didn't know where we were, quite honestly. So my dad lives in Indianapolis, and he was telling me about it. He said, "Oh, that's great, baby. It'd be like an hour 45, 2 minutes for me." I was like, "No, Dad, Louisville, Kentucky." He's like, "Uh-huh. You'll be like an hour. It's 2 hours south of me." I was like, "Kentucky, Dad? You live in Indiana?" He said, "Babe, I think you should go check out where you're moving to before you say yes." And someone heard that story and sent me this little meme, if you've not seen it before. It's a little joke meme, but I tell you, that meme helps me find Kentucky every single time on the map. I know where we are now. So Louisville Public Media, as you heard, my background is in public media. It's mission-driven, and we are right there on 4th Street in downtown. Let's hear it for downtown Louisville. And downtown Louisville. I think it's a great downtown that we have here. We are mission-driven. We are all about independent, courageous news, music, and experiences that serve and meets the aspirations of our diverse communities, I like to say. And so we have WFPL, which is our NPR news station. We have the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting. This is where all the independent, nonpartisan news happens. Essential news and resources you need, long-form journalism, daily journalism, and really just digging in. And what I like to say is our job is to lay out how the news is showing up in people's lives here in Louisville. We've got national news, we've got international news. What's most important to me is what people are talking about at the dinner table and what keeps people up at night. And those are the stories I like for us to go after. We also have great music stations. This was new for me. I don't know how many people know this. If you know the history, this is a merger. These stations were not all three together at some point. WFPL actually stands for Free Public Libraries. That was a station that came out of the library. WUOL, obviously, here we are, out of the University of Louisville. They merged together several years ago to create Louisville Public Media. We are one in, I think, 5 stations I counted that have all 3. So it's very unique that we have all 3. Most people just have a news station with music format, or they will have a news and one or the other, either a music station or a classical. Nashville, Cincinnati, us, there's very few that have. And what I will also say, I haven't counted this, I think we might be the only that have all 3 hosted throughout the day. Many of them are not hosted. So to have a live hosting makes a really big difference, and that's really about the connection that we want to have with you guys. However, 8 weeks into my job, a little thing called rescission happened. And rescission is that story you heard about federal funding being taken away from public media. Big fight over CPB and NPR and PBS, there was that hearing, all the things. What that meant for us, what a lot of people don't know, is that the federal funding was only 4.5% of our operating budget. Smaller stations have a lot more, 40, 50, some even Alaska, 70%. So it really hurt them. But 4.5% for us wasn't a number to sneeze at. It was almost $400,000. I watched that vote happen around 1 o'clock in the morning, and by 6 a.m., we were in an emergency fill the gap drive. This city showed up and showed out in a way that none of the others, I will tell you, did. We raised over $500,000 within 4 days. We have also in that time gained about 2,000 members, which is record-breaking for us. We're at a record-breaking number of about 15,000 members. If you understand, to explain our model just a little bit, I call it the 3-legged stool. So our revenue comes from membership, that $10 a month, $15 a month, $20 a month, major gifts, and sponsorship underwriting. And so to have the members and the sustainers come in the way they did makes all the difference in the world for sustainability. So we get to say we are now 100% community supported and grant funded. But one thing that I like to point to, in that whole fight, a lot of noise, right? I'm not here to get into the politics of it and the perceived bias and the claims of NPR and PBS, But I think what happens when you have conversations and when people are speaking past each other is you forget the origin and the purpose for why it started. And the purpose was all the way back to 1967, signed in by Lyndon B. Johnson, who created public media. And I'm not going to read these quotes, but it's the nerdy journalist in me that says this was a fascinating speech. But I do implore you to go back and read it. It's so relevant even today. The reasons 60 years ago why he thought to put public broadcasting in are so relevant today. But even before then, the founding fathers put freedom of the press in the Constitution, coming from where they came from and starting a new country. There was a handful of things that they said was important, and freedom of the press was one of them. So where does that leave us now? We just celebrated 75 years of Louisville public media. We are those 3 stations, but there's so much more. We've got newsletters, we've got podcasts, we are on the app. If you don't have the LPM app, download it now. We are on .org. We're trying to obviously meet people where they are. We know consumption has changed, and we are doing our best, and that will kind of be the way forward for us. We also have great community partners. I really believe in community. I've been out there 2-3 times a week, really embedding myself. I don't think that I can be a Louisville Public Media president and CEO without becoming entrenched in Louisville. And that's what I've committed to, that's what I've done. I'm not only a media leader, I'm a nonprofit leader in this community, and I'm a community leader. And I take that very seriously. So our core commitments, community, we will continue to show up. We will ensure that the news is accessible, that it matters, and it reaches. And delight and discovery. We introduce you to something you didn't even know that you wanted to know about. 9 months in, I'm having a great time. I'm meeting great community leaders like Karina here and Teddy and our arts leaders. We're having such a great time. We just celebrated 30 years of WFPK. I've jumped in the car and gone to a lot of our sister stations in Kentucky to get to know Kentucky a little bit more. I forgot to mention FPK and Waterfront Wednesday. How could I forget that? Hopefully go out to Waterfront Wednesdays, the last Wednesday of every month during the summer. It's so much fun. And I'm also having a great social time. This is a fun town, y'all. I'm glad I found it on the map. We went to Churchill Downs for Thanksgiving. We've gone to all the galas and all the parties possible. And no one in DC or LA can understand what I mean when I say I crossed the bridge to Indiana, but I love doing it, and it's so fun, and it's just, there's so much here to dive into. And just last weekend, I found my new obsession, and I went to Von Mar. Honey, I did not know there was a little derby girl in me fighting for her life to get out, but she has arrived, and I'm trying all the hats. So I'm going to land with this one. I know I'm over time. It's this one story about our why, because we always have to dig into our why, particularly with our mission. When I was running All Things Considered, it was after the 2016 election, and I had a very young team that I had built, a very diverse team I had built. Michelle and I, and probably one older other, had actually done elections, and so this was all new for them. And at this time, if you remember, there was a time where the press was really tagged as the enemy of the state. And I'm not taking fake news and disinformation and silos that we were in, but that was the label we were given, was enemy of the state. And obviously it hurts the industry, but it hurts personally when this is your job. And so my team was really despondent, and Michelle and I were trying to think, what do we do? And so we brought in some old guards and those who've been through it to just kind of lift up and say how you can get through this. And so, and they were off the record with our team. My team was about 8 then. And Ted Koppel, this is not off the record because I've heard him tell the story at least one more time. But it's a story that I get chills every single time I tell it. He was covering the Edmund Pettus Bridge, Selma, 1965. And a lot of people know about the famous march, and they know about Martin Luther King going over and the speech afterwards. If you do your history, and hopefully we all know this, there was a Sunday before that was not as productive. And it's called Bloody Sunday. And Ted Koppel, at 25, this was the biggest story that he was covering. And he called his wife after that, what happened on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, if you know. Alabama State Police were waiting for them. They did not cross the bridge. It was very bloody for that civil rights march going across. He called his wife and said, I can't do this. I have to be out there. This is wrong. It's egregious. It's horrific what I saw today. And I have to fight with them. I have to stand up with them. She said, well, one, this is the biggest story that you've been waiting for all your life, so I don't know what you're talking about. But two, if that's what you really need to do, I guess go do it. But you need to understand, remember it's 1965. We don't have CNN. We have 3 network stations. She said, we can't see what you see. We don't know what just happened. And what you get to do, I get chills, is tell us what happened. The only way the world's gonna know what happened on that bridge today is if you go on air tonight and tell us what happened. And that is my why today. I'm here to put stuff on public record. I'm here to offer a variety of perspectives and lived experiences on the air so that we can understand what's happening in our world in front of us, what's happening in our city, what's happening in our state, because that is a historical record. That is the duty of a journalist to be able to do. And that's why I'm here. So, thank you.
You get a pen and then you get
a
special pen.
I'm not gonna have you put this on all.
We love having you in town, and you're going to continue to love what you see. This town is amazing, and you'll learn something new every day. And you guys do great work. All right. We'll take questions, but we'll go over time to do it, so you know what that means. If you have to go, you can go. You'll take questions. Sure. You're a journalist, you have to.
I told you I could need those 2 minutes to introduce myself.
Kenya, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. My name is Fred Cowan, longtime member. And a lot of us in this room remember the day, which really wasn't that long ago, when the news cycle of news was dominated by the Courier-Journal. Courier-Journal, as you probably know, was a fantastic newspaper, won many Pulitzer Prizes, was rated one of the top 10 newspapers in the nation for many, many years. Well, because of the change, as you're well aware, in the news business and the online stuff, newspapers have really gone downhill in their shadow of their former self, if anything. At the time, when the Courier was as strong as it was, it almost by itself set the public agenda. It also held public officials accountable and held other institutions accountable in a very big way. One of the great changes in my mind, or great problems in my mind, is over the years, since we don't have newspapers, there's a big vacuum in holding institutions, politicians, and others accountable. I know, of course, the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting, I'm familiar with what they do. I just wonder if you could address that, if that's in your mindset about how Louisville public media is going to go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I've heard all of that since I've been here, and I think it's no secret that right before I got here, LPM went through some layoffs, and then they went through some layoffs about 8 months before then, so 2 rounds of layoffs in a year's time. We have a lot of disruption in media. There's audience disruption, there's sponsorship disruption. It's affecting, as you see, as the internet did with newspapers. Quite honestly, podcasts and audio and streaming is affecting audio. And so we are figuring out the business part of this. But it's so important, obviously, to keep doing what we're doing. One of the things that Louisville Public Media has done is, I think Kristen mentioned, we're a part of collaborations. My last job, that managing editor job at NPR, was managing editor of collaborative journalism. And that's where you get stations together in their region, because local journalism is so important. And we saw some of the contraction happening. So how can we help, particularly smaller stations, get together and be able to share resources and do things together in order to keep local journalism, particularly local nonprofit, independent journalism available. So we are both a part of the Kentucky Public Radio Network. That's the station we collaborate with Murray, with Bowling Green down there at Western, and with EKU. I was just there on Monday, in fact. And so that's one, and we're part of a second collaboration. I know Gil was mentioning rural, the Appalachia Mid-South Newsroom, which is actually a 3-state, 7-station, including Tennessee and West Virginia. These are really small stations that have thrived in a way, but the whole point is because local journalism is going away in that way, and we've got to find a way to keep it going, particularly with the news deserts that are happening, and collaborations, I think, are one ways that we're going to do that.
Hi, Kenya Walkuno. Thank you for being here today. My question is this. Several years ago, a younger man than me came to Rotary and spoke, and he was talking about, at that time, there was the second largest Cuban exile group here in Louisville.
Yes.
And how are you addressing Hispanic viewers or listeners?
Yeah. So, two things. One, our strategic plan was just passed on or approved on Tuesday. I've been living and breathing that almost since I got here, and I'm thrilled about it. And that is a core commitment and central. One of the, I think, I skipped past it. Ooh. Oh, it's gone. That's okay. On one of the slides, what's that? On one of the slides, I say something about every zip code. It is what I've learned in being out here and really putting myself out and speaking with many of you, in fact, is that I mentioned when I was talking about our mission where it says community, I've actually just recently changed that to communities, because I think it is important as I've started to learn Louisville. When we say Louisville, we do ourselves a little bit of a disservice in that it's a monolith and that we are speaking about Louisville from our own lived experience or neighborhood, and that's not true for every neighborhood. Everyone's neighborhood is a different lived experience, and to be able to acknowledge that. So I'm very keen on neighborhoods, Beachmont and South Louisville and West End and East End, if you're in Prospect, if you're in the Grange, if you're in California, you're in Russell, wherever. Every zip code is my commitment so that people see themselves and represent. A lot of the work I did at NPR, about 20 years worth of working and researching our Black and Brown audiences and how we both show up for them, but how we gain them as listeners as well.
Thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Kathy Golightly-Sanders, a very proud sustaining member of LPM.
Thank you.
And we were so thrilled to see our community step up like it often does when those federal cuts came. And obviously we are grateful that for the Louisville station, it was a relatively small percentage of your budget. However, it's a significant amount of money.
Sure is.
It's great. We rallied around the flag. We got that done. But what I want to know is, what kind of plans are in place to diversify your funding stream? Because that's going to continue. And what will it look like?
That's exactly right. So I think one thing to help understand is that when rescission happened, we knew obviously this was an ethers. We were hearing about it almost every day. We were really fighting for appropriations and the next budget. And what rescission did is actually affect the current budget. That's why we use the word clawback, because the money had already been approved and sent to Treasury and ready to be dispersed to us. So that affected our operational year right then when it was taken. It was clawed back out of Treasury. So I think that's important to understand. And we're clearly not getting it in the next budget. So we've had to think so much. You're exactly right. This is what we talk about all the time. The meteor hit the roof and there's a hole in the roof. You got to patch that, but you also got to keep paying the mortgage every single month as well. That is another tenet of our strategic plan is long-term resilience and financial sustainability. I think for many nonprofit leaders in here, we make the mistake of thinking that mission-driven and nonprofit also means we're broke. And that's just not the way we can get money and we can make profit. That's called sustainability, and that's called a good business plan, right? And so I think about that a lot. I recently just hired our CFO, in fact, who thinks about that a lot. There are ways to diversify. I will just say, I think thinking about who we diversify with makes a huge difference and opens our pool. We used to sponsor and partner with those who are in bed with us. Probably not a great phrase these days. But usually just other public media stations or maybe even other nonprofits. That pool is drying up, as we all know in this city. And so we have to think outside. What does it mean to partner with corporate partners that we usually didn't before? What does it mean to dive into businesses and take conversations into industries we haven't before? We need to widen our pool across when it comes to both sponsorship and major giving.
We appreciate you. Barbara, tell us what's next week.
All right, thank you so much, Kenya. So next week, as you think about who is going to be the exciting, dynamic speaker next week, I want to lay this on your ear. We find our purpose in life through our service to others. Kenya just explained how she found her true purpose in life. It was her faith and it was her mission and her mama. I loved your mama's story. So next week, our speaker also is a living legend to the youth and the leaders in this community. I met her in the late 1990s. She's doing today what she was doing back then. She's just doing it bigger and better through Blueprint 502. That used to be Youth Build. And I met Lynn Rippey sitting at the last table in 1998 in the convention center when I first heard the West Louisville Boys Choir sing. I knew I was in a little bit of heaven. And it was Lynn that instilled in those young men a purpose for life. She's going to come and talk about working with youth 18 to 24. Today's voices are tomorrow's leaders. President Ken, you coming next week? I love that about you. You're always here. Give it up for the best current president.
Appreciate all of you. A reminder to the guests, John will be in the back table to tell you more about Rotary. And Alan, you were a former Rotarian. You got to come back. You're never a former Rotarian. Always a Rotarian. Hey, have a great weekend. Enjoy the warmth coming up.